For this episode, we are going to be covering fractions and how we exactly interpret them and work with them in a sense. So, looking at this first question, we have 3 over 5 and adding that to 1 over 6. And at first glance, you would think, oh, wait, we could just add the 3 and the 1 and the 5 and the 6, and we'd get 4 over 11. No, that does not work. And in order to add fraction, the rule that you need to remember is to have the exact same denominator. That is the key to solving fractions with different denominators. So when we're solving this and we want to make them into the equal denominator, there are several things we can do. We can either cross multiply, which is essentially the same thing as just changing the denominator into the same form. So therefore, 3 out of 5 and 6, we know that this one we can multiply it by 6 to make it 30, and this one to multiply it by 5 to make it 30 as well on the denominators. 3 over 5, we can rewrite this as 18 over 30, and 1 over 6, we can write it as 5 over 30. And now, since the denominators are the same, we can rewrite this whole thing as 18 over 30 plus 5 over 30 equaling to 23 over 30. And this is the simplest as you can get from this, as 23. For this one, we're going to be writing these two terms as one single term, as one single fraction. And in order to do so, we're going to want to use the same rule and have the same denominators. So x over 2, and we want to make x equal to some number over 2. And to find out what that sum number is, we multiply both sides by 2, and we get 2x over 2 as this final fraction. And now that we have both of them in the same denominator, we can rewrite this whole equation as 3x over 2. As most of you can see, 2x plus x over 2 is going to equal to 3x over 2. And the second one is basically the same principle, except the denominator is now x. And how would we want to rewrite this? X, we want to rewrite it as some number over x. Well, this becomes a bit more tricky, which means this some number on top will actually become x squared. And that is actually, it is a bit complicated to grasp at first, but once you get the idea, it'll be much simpler. And once we have x squared, we just use the same principles, x squared over x, in addition to 2 over x. Thus, we get x squared plus 2 over x as our final answer.
Without a calculator, work out 6 over 7 divided by 1 2/3. First, what we are going to do is change this mixed fraction into an improper fraction. For this, we can make the 1 3/3 and add that to the 2/3. So 1 turns into 3/3, and we add that to 2/3 to get 5/3. So that is the mixed fraction as an improper fraction. Then for the division, as we know, any division is just a multiplication of the reciprocal. So we will multiply 6 over 7 by the reciprocal of 5 over 3, which is 3 over 5. And that we will get 18 over 35. Write this equation as a single fraction in its simplest form. For this, what we will do is first to do 1 over c plus 1 over d. As we know, for adding fractions, we must make the denominators the same on both fractions. In this case, we can multiply both sides of 1 over c by d to get d over cd. We can also multiply both sides of 1 over d by c to get c over cd. We can now add these fractions by adding their numerators. So d over cd plus c over cd to give us d plus c over cd. Using what we got, we can do the subtraction part of the question. D plus c over cd, take away c minus d over cd. And for subtraction, we can also just subtract the second numerator from the first, as we have the same denominator on both fractions. So d plus c minus c minus d would give us d plus c minus c plus d, which equals to 2d. So now we know the answer to the question is 2d over cd, which can be simplified into 2 over c if we divide d from both sides.